Okay, welcome everyone. This is the second in the series of Wallboard 2.1 webinars that we've been doing. We did our first one for EMEA yesterday, and today is for the Americas. So I've got with me, who will be doing the lion's share of the talking today, is John Kessinger. So welcome, John.
Yeah, thank you. Hey, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We'll give everyone about 2 minutes to get into the call here. So we'll start 2 minutes after the hour, but I appreciate everyone who's joined up thus far. Hopefully this will be a good session for you today. Hey, everyone. Thanks for messaging in the chat.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say, please do say hi in the chat. We will see all of those, and they are very much appreciated. If you do have any questions that you would like to pose to John, please do put them in the chat. What I will do is I will kind of curate them as the session goes along, and then I will pose them to John at the end once he's kind of finished his presentation. So if you do have a question, just please do post it. It won't get ignored. I will capture it, and then we will tackle it at the end of the presentation. We're aiming for, I guess around sort of 40 minutes kind of talking, and then depending on how many questions we get, we'll go through as many of those as we can, so we can be as respectful of your time as possible. So great to have you with us, and yeah.
We've got a lot of people in the chat, Ian. We're pretty popular.
We do. Yeah, I'd love to read out names, but I don't think I'm allowed to. But hi to you all. We see you all. It's the end of the day for me and the beginning of the morning for you. So good morning, good evening, wherever you're joining us from.
All right. Well, so, I think we are 2 minutes after the hour, Ian. So I think it's as good a time as any to get started.
I agree.
Let me
I'm
go ahead.
I'm going to go ahead and leave the stage and hand everything over to you, and hopefully that will work.
Perfect. There we go. Thank you, Ian. So thank you, everyone, for joining today. Just to introduce myself, my name is John Kessinger, and I'm our product manager here at Wallboard. And today the goal is going to be to give you some more information about what came out in our latest 2.1 update. But before we get into the features and some other things that we want to talk about, we just really wanted to quickly preface that this has been one of our biggest infrastructure upgrades to date. So typically whenever we release updates, this means more features, whether that's something that relates to enterprise security, simplifying the way that we manage content, or, I mean, we couldn't go through this webinar without saying the word AI. It's the biggest buzzword right now, but our first time dipping our toes into AI and bringing some features that we think that can bring a lot of value to our customers. But typically, a lot of these updates revolve around those features. But actually, in this case, there was a lot of things that happened behind the scenes. So, for example, a lot of you access Wallboard through our cloud instance. Well, it's very important how Wallboard's hosted. What's the architecture behind that? How do we keep the wheels moving, so to speak? So there was a lot of that behind the scenes, and it may not sound as exciting as new features and capabilities, but it's equally as important, especially when we want to provide an enterprise solution that everyone's happy with and trusts. So with that being said, let me go ahead and just go to the first slide here. Before we get into any features, I want to just quickly talk about what our philosophy is for the product. Where do we see Wallboard now? What do we want the future to be? I know it's been some time since we've done some previous webinars, so we think that it's really important that you just know where we're headed, and at least where we are right now. To start all of this off, a lot of you have been Wallboard customers for quite some time. We've been great to hear your feedback over the years to help improve the product. But as we've started to assess ourselves more so in the digital signage or content management system market, we really noticed that there's two distinct paths that platforms typically go down. The first is that oftentimes people will have a very powerful platform, so meaning it has a lot of capabilities, it can do a lot of things, it has many features that can fulfill the use cases you have or solve the problems that you need it to. Whereas on the other hand, you may have a platform that is rather easy to use, but that simplicity quickly creates, let's say, roadblocks when it comes to wanting to do something specific. So, for example, your needs may change in the future, and then you have to switch to another platform because your current one can't fulfill those needs anymore. So there's this really delicate balance between offering a platform that's highly capable or powerful and making it easy enough to use so that your average end user can get the value out of it, that they can contribute to the system. And we sort of feel like we're in this middle ground, or we're fortunate enough to be able to do both of these things. I think historically, if you've been a Wallboard customer for quite some time, I think you've understood that we're a very capable platform. This is often the first compliment that we receive, is that we're a very complete platform. We offer a lot of possibilities, or at least when delivering solutions to your customers or your organization. And so our goal moving forward is that we want to make the platform easier to use as well. So not just focusing on those powerful features, but also making it so everyone can use the platform, and it's not just reserved for your more technical types, etc. So this is really what we call our 50% commitment. 50% of our efforts want to continue to make our platform very powerful, and again, solve a lot of problems for our customers. But on the other hand, we also want to dedicate a lot of our time to streamlining the existing system, making workflows easier, refining the user interface, and things of the sort. And so really what that means when we talk about features being our system being powerful, rather, is that we want to provide the right tools for the right job. So when we release new features and things of that sort, we're really just trying to solve a problem that inherently exists within digital signage. And so that's why it's important that we continue to release new features and these type of things. But I think the most important thing to note here, and you can even see this at the bottom of the left of this slide here, is we just quite frankly refuse to outgrow our usability. If we provide a platform that can do a lot of things but nobody can use them, then that's something that we need to improve on. And I think I'll be alluding to that further on as we go through this webinar. And so what's our end goal as a company or as a platform? Really, we just want to provide a solution. So let's say for your IT or your admins who are trying to decide on what digital signage system to use, we want to provide a platform that can easily be configured exactly how that organization needs. It can be governed or permissioned so that everyone has access to what they need, and that they can do that securely. On the other hand, you have content teams or content contributors. We want to make it as easy as possible for them to contribute to the system, hopefully with as least amount of training as possible. And we want them to be able to do that confidently. And whether that means they don't have a fear of maybe breaking something in the system or doing something that they shouldn't. And same goes for the admins, right? Everyone's on the same page, and everyone's able to contribute to the system in a good way. So that's our plan for the platform. Again, we do want to focus on making things more accessible for you, and we'll be talking about that just a little bit later. But whenever we talk about the features that exist within 2.1, I think it's important to first talk about what are sort of the pillars that make up this update. So the first I'll say is enterprise grade security. We like to call this non-negotiable. If we are an enterprise platform, or let's say just providing a platform in general that people can use, we've got to make sure it's secure, if it follows compliance, and it's also a platform that you trust. So this can mean many things. Again, it could mean some of those infrastructure updates that I was talking about behind the scenes, or this could be something as simple as pursuing SOC 2 compliance, which we are actively in the process of doing. If you're not sure what SOC 2 is, basically it is a way of saying that we are compliant with certain security practices and practices we use within our organization. And so there's an auditing period for that. You have to they have to oversee that you're following the rules and so forth. And so that's something that we're currently going through. You can expect that we'll have that later this year. And currently, this is something that we're currently engaged in. So if there is some sort of paperwork or a document that you need to prove that we are going through that process, let's say you're a partner and you're working on a deal or an opportunity for one of your clients, that is something that we can provide to you, which is a letter of engagement that says that we're actively pursuing that. On the other hand, when it comes directly to the system, we've also wanted to simplify our content architecture. What do I mean by that? In Wallboard, there's many different ways that you can send content to a screen. You could create a playlist, which is like a collection of assets that you put into a timeline. Think of like a slideshow. You can build more advanced content, some of it which may be interactive, maybe it's dynamic, right? We're showing dynamic information like a Power BI report or some KPI metrics that you want to show, et cetera. And so depending on what your specific needs are, the way that you use the system can be widely different. And this is something that we've identified from a lot of your feedback over the years. And it's something that we want to finally address. And so we've made some initial steps so that we can make the moves that we need to later. And again, I'll talk more about that here in a moment. But this is a very, very important part for me to mention because, again, it does allow us to go to that path moving forward of being a more simplistic or elegant system. The other side of this is we have a lot of customers who currently manage their content using data. Now, this can mean many different things. This means that a content could be powered even by an integration. So for example, one of the new things that we came out with was integrating Facebook and Instagram. So if you're already publishing information about your organization or information you want people to see on your social media, why do you have to duplicate that in your digital signage platform? We should just be able to bring that in automatically through a template, for example, and then the information comes in automatically. So you're not having to do double the work. And so whether it's through an integration or through in-house tools, for example, we have what are called data sources, which is a way in which people can contribute and add their own data to our system to power their content. If that doesn't make much sense right now, again, we'll cover that in a moment. But these are two areas that we wanted to focus on in regards to data, making it easier to manage your content through it, and then also adding more integration so that those updates can just come through automatically. Extending on that topic, sometimes people don't have data or integrations. Sometimes information is just out there on the web and you want to display it on your signage. For example, for how many years or for how long have people been told you need a website, right? You need to have an online presence. And so depending on your organization, you already may have a lot of information on your website that's publicly available. Again, we're trying to prevent you from having to do double the work. So we've came out with some ways to get that information from your website, bring it into the signage so that we can create feeds that update automatically. And then last but not least, and this will be a little bit of a cliffhanger that I'll show you at the very end. But also, how can we use AI to actually manage your signage directly? Now, depending on what platform you're paying attention to, this can be done in many different ways. We personally think that the way of managing signage from AI, let's say, would be done through platforms like Claude or ChatGPT. So, for example, we've created a connector that you can use with these platforms. Enter in a simple request, such as I want to upload a file and then assign it to my screen. We can actually carry out that task with the help of AI, basically just taking natural language and then having it carry out tasks on your behalf. And there's many reasons why this can be useful, but we'll see two examples at the very end where we onboard a customer that has 50 screens just through information that we have in a spreadsheet. And then another example where I'm actually able to even update a piece of content through Claude in this example. So let's talk first about enterprise security and infrastructure. So there's really two things that were, let's say, the main points that came out with this update. The first is SSO. So in the past, when anyone needed the ability to integrate SSO or single sign-on, I should say, you had to reach out to Wallboard directly. We had to help you set that up, and there was also a fee attached with that because we had to help assist through that process and use our resources to assist you with that. However, we've listened to your feedback, and it's now an expectation that people should be able to set this up themselves. So if you look at other enterprise software platforms, you'll see that you can set up SSO yourself, and it's not an additional fee. So we wanted to follow suit. So now you can SSO is self-service. It can be set up by the customer or by the partner. And yeah, it's not an additional cost. It's not something that we have to help you with directly. And so if that's something that you're interested in, please reach out to us and we can steer you in the right direction. On the other hand, and this is when I start talking about this being our biggest infrastructure update to date, is that the infrastructure that hosts Wallboard, let's say, or the technology behind it, we have switched to what's called Kubernetes. Basically, what this means is that when you access Wallboard through the cloud or through our website, we need to host that. And how it's being hosted previously was in containers, let's say. And so Kubernetes is just a modern form of that. The main result that you get out of this is high availability and scalability. So if we're an enterprise platform and we want to continue being a platform that people can trust and believe that fits their needs, then we need to be able to provide that. So that's the whole point of Kubernetes. Again, as we get larger as a company, as we have more customers on our public instances, they will be able to handle more. And so this is really just a thing that helps us with scalability, for example. There's other things also that came, for example, multi-factor authentication. So if this needs to be enforced across your entire organization, you can now do that. So previously, it just used to be on the end user. The end user would have to set up multi-factor authentication. There was really no way to enforce it as an administrator across the board. So now, if that's enforced, whenever that user logs in, they will have to set up multi-factor, two-factor authentication whenever they try to sign in. So that will be very helpful, especially when for some of your organizations where you have a lot of users and you want to keep things locked down. Other things like passwordless login. So for example, if you've ever signed into a platform and it just sends you a code via email, you then type in that code whenever you try to log into Wallboard. That will allow you to get signed in. Of course, if you have multi-factor authentication enabled, that will still be required after you input the magic code, let's say. So that is the main takeaways when it comes to enterprise security. This is something, again, that I say is non-negotiable. So this is always something that we'll continue to pursue. It's just a part of providing an enterprise platform. So this is something that will always be a talking point as we do more and more webinars. All right, let's quickly go into what we decided to do as far as solving the content architecture problem we like to say in Wallboard. Really what we've identified is that in the past, we've provided a single system that everyone can access. We don't limit a lot of our features in what you can access. So whenever you log into Wallboard, you may see that we have a slide designer, a content editor, you can build playlists, and these are all different interfaces that you have to become adapted to. However, you don't necessarily need to use every single feature in Wallboard. We have it there for when you need it, but it may not be something that you use. So one of the roadblocks that we've had is we've wanted to create a way in which we can segment the experience depending on what the user needs to see. So for example, let's say that a customer does not need to create any interactive content. Then when they go into our content designer, why do we show them everything? Why do we show them all our interactive features, etc.? So for example, our goal moving forward is we want to divide the experience that the user receives depending on how they need to use the system. And first, we wanted to start with content. So for example, we've identified two paths. One path is the interactive path, where if you've gone into our content designer, you see all these features, all these possibilities. Well, in the future, that will only be reserved for when you're making interactive content or sensor-driven content. And if you're asking yourself, what is sensor-driven content? That's exactly why we're having this conversation. The other path is, let's say, what 80% of our users are doing, the orchestration path, which is basically, I want to upload assets, I want to put them into a playlist, I then want to send those to a screen and maybe schedule them. So, sort of the common points or common things that people are doing in the signage system. And so, if this is the path we want to go moving forward, then we had to make a change that may not seem very apparent immediately, but it allows us to go down this path moving forward. And that is, whenever people wanted to create contents where they put things into zones, I'll show you an example here in a moment, where maybe you have almost like something you would see on the news, right? You have a side panel that maybe shows some weather information. You have a scrolling ticker at the bottom. And then in the center, you have a playlist of assets that are just rotating constantly while being in this nice layout. Previously, you were only able to do that by using what we call contents. And so because of that, if someone just wanted to create a simple layout, they would be exposed to all our additional features. So what we did was that we don't care if you're in our slide designer or our content designer, you should be able to bring in and embed playlists to create layouts. And so that's what we've done. You can now bring playlists, channels, etc., other types of assets in our system, and bring them into what we call slides. And again, if you're not familiar with this concept, that's okay. Just know that in the long run, this will allow us to make decisions where we can separate the experience and simplify it for 80% of our users, especially when it comes to our content designers. So before I keep talking, let me just go ahead and show you an example. Perfect. So this would be a playlist that we're in. So as you can see, I can drag assets into my timeline. Ultimately, this is what will show on my screen. And usually there's two flavors in which people assign these playlists to screen. You'll either make it full screen or you'll make it something like this, where I'm building a layout. I only want one zone to show my playlist, but yet it's complemented by all this other information that you see on the screen. And the end result is something that looks like this. Actually, in this case, there's two playlists that are running. The small zone that you see over on the left, where it says text us and be in the know. And then in the center, the big zone where we just saw the assets rotate. And so the idea behind this is a lot of people choose this layout because they can sort of keep their branding guidelines consistent. So for example, if I just go back here really quick, the ticker down here at the bottom, the time, the logo, even the background, all the colors that are used, no one's really able to edit that. That stays consistent, but only really in the center does this playlist change. So there's a lot of people who design content this way. So we wanted to remove some of the roadblocks that we had in the system to make people be able to do this. And so again, just note, we're trying to make your lives easier when you go into the editor. And the reason why we made this change is because we are getting to recreating our designers or our content designers. If you've been around with Wallboard long enough, you've seen what 1.0 Wallboard has looked like. And then recently, the 2.0 version, where we overhauled our user interface. We want to bring that same modern interface to our content designers. But at the same time, we want to make things easier for you, whether it's creating content, creating a layout like we just saw here. And so this is something that we want to improve upon. And while this may not seem like a major feature, this is something that will make our lives easier further down the road. Now let's get into the actual data aspects of this. So I did mention that a lot of people will have their content be powered via data. So whether that's via an integration or ways that we can manage data directly in Wallboard. A classic example is people would use things like Excel spreadsheets or Google Sheets in order to manage their signage. Examples of where that's pretty common is any example where you need to show lists of information. Maybe you have an event schedules board where you're showing all the events that are happening today. Maybe you have a menu board where you're showing all of your items, their prices, etc., or something like a tenant directory. And so, in any of these cases, a lot of times people would just have a Google sheet. They would match it up with a template. They would simply just add a new entry into their tenant directory, and it would make the result appear on the screen. There's no need to edit your design. There's no need to learn additional interfaces of Wallboard. Simply, you just give that user a spreadsheet, and whatever they add to it displays on the screen. And so we found that a lot of people were doing this for these specific use cases, but oftentimes there were roadblocks. Just a good example is if you've ever tried to include an image or something like that in a Google Sheet or Excel, it's very difficult. You have to upload the image somewhere and then take that URL and put it in the spreadsheet. And it almost feels like an awkward workaround. And so essentially we've brought spreadsheets in-house into Wallboard because of that problem. And so while we've had these in the system for some time, we wanted to expand upon this functionality so that there wasn't a reason for someone to still want to use Google Sheets or Excel. The first common one is that you couldn't share our data sources or our spreadsheets in Wallboard. Now you can. So while yes, you can edit these through a login in Wallboard, you do have the option, and I say option because it's not mandatory, to make that database editable via shareable link. So for example, if you did have a menu board or a tenant directory and you wanted to just make it easy for someone like the office admin or someone like that to simply just update the tenant directory, all you would have to do is share that spreadsheet with them. They don't have to learn any other part of Wallboard. They just specifically focus on editing that spreadsheet, and it ultimately affects the content on their screen. And why do we think this is important? Well, or why do we think people use spreadsheets? I think it's because everyone has some familiarity with a spreadsheet. Everyone has seen a spreadsheet or worked with one in their lives before. So while we may represent it slightly differently than what you've seen in Excel or Google Sheets, it's at least a concept that someone's familiar with, as opposed to just jumping into Wallboard for the first time. And so we just thought that that's an easy way for people to update certain types of content. We've also added some additional capabilities, like I said, to these spreadsheets. For example, drop downs. Sometimes people need set options. For example, let's say you're making an event board, and I want to say that this event is in this specific room, and I don't want someone to mistype it, because if they don't type it correctly, it will just say the wrong name on the screen. But also, we won't be able to route that meeting in case you have like door cards or meeting room tablets that sit outside those rooms that say the current meeting that's happening. And this also allows us to set up more advanced things like triggers, et cetera, in the system. So this was very helpful for those type of use cases. Also scheduling. We brought our same scheduling interface that you see in playlists, and we've brought that into spreadsheets. So again, if you need to schedule something to show at a certain time, like an event, or maybe you've just made a database of assets that you want to display on the screen and schedule them, and a spreadsheet's an easier interface for you, you can now do your scheduling directly in there. We can also lock the spreadsheets, whether it's a row, a column, or the structure itself, as well as be able to format that data. So if you want the data ultimately to be represented differently when it hits a screen, that's now an option as well. Aside from our new spreadsheet capabilities, which we'll see here in a moment, we've also added new integrations. I already mentioned Facebook and Instagram, but we've also added the ability to show SharePoint news. SharePoint news is basically just a way for you to post your internal company updates if you're using the SharePoint news product within Microsoft. And again, the idea behind this is that if you're already contributing to updating information somewhere in your organization already, whether it's SharePoint News, Facebook, or Instagram, you shouldn't have to duplicate that effort in Wallboard. We should have those updates come in automatically. Also, from a lot of our partners, especially those that work in the event spaces, work with conference rooms, these type of things, showing event information is very common. Again, in the cases where maybe you have many different conference rooms and you want to just show a single list that shows what are all the meetings that are happening today throughout all these various conference rooms. Well, previously, these were all separate, what we call data sources in the system. You would have to add one for each different calendar or each different meeting room. now we're able to combine all of those together. So while you still need to add them, we can combine them without any additional scripting, complex workflows, etc., so that you can show those in a single list. The other thing too is that we've redesigned our data sources interface. And what do I mean by that? It's really a three-step approach. Your integration, so the data that you're inputting into Wallboard. If we need to format it, so if we want it to look a little bit different when it hits the screen, then that is the second option. And then lastly, the output. So once we've taken the data, reformatted it, what does it ultimately look like when we send it to the template in the screen? And so we'll see an example here because this will make a little bit more sense. So this is actually an example of our new spreadsheets. So as you can see, we have different columns and rows of information. In this case, it's an event schedule. I have this drop down here that I've just selected. In this case, I actually want to point this meeting to a different room. So I've just changed that. Again, there's no ability to type it in incorrectly and prevent that meeting from going to its correct room because we're using a drop down. You'll also see here that I'm actually able to click on the scheduling. And just like you've seen in playlists, when you schedule an asset to appear, we can also schedule certain data entries within this interface. And so this is what I mean where we almost made a solution which is spreadsheets, but specific to digital signage. But also, as you can see, we can also share them. So again, if you want to make someone's life very easy and they just need to update something like event schedules, a menu board, or a tenant directory, you can now just share that spreadsheet directly with them. And as you saw before, the interface looks identical. And this is the end result. So this is what it looks like when we show event schedules. Even if we weren't using our internal spreadsheets, this would also be a good way of showing off how we can combine multiple calendars together. And this is ultimately what shows outside the room whenever we're showing the current meeting and the upcoming ones that are happening in that specific location. All right. So this is sort of a continuation of the last topic that we just discussed. So a lot of times people will bring data into the system, whether that's via an integration or the spreadsheets that we just saw. But sometimes people don't have a system where their information is currently kept. Maybe a lot of that information is posted publicly on their website. And now it really depends on your company and your use case, but you may have types of organizations where they're more public facing than others. So for some of our partners, these may be great verticals for you to focus on, or at least see where these features are applicable. A couple to note are just universities, governments, K through 12 public schools, venues, event centers, sports stadiums, anything that is really in the public and has a very popular online presence with a lot of frequently updated news. These are perfect candidates for these two features that I'm about to talk about. And those are AI web scrapers and our AI data source feeds. Let me talk about the first one. So basically what we identified is that, again, a lot of people have information on their websites that they're actively maintaining. In the examples that I provided previously, we want to prevent you from having to do double the work, meaning that you set it up once and it will run continuously, or at least your content will update continuously as long as we can keep getting that information from your website. And so one of the ways that we wanted to do that was introduce web scraping to our platform. So for example, all I have to do is provide a URL. So for example, if you went to Wallboard US, our website, and you wanted to look at our blog posts, maybe I wanted to show those blog posts on our screen because it talks about our new updates and things like that we've done with the platform, or case studies that we've recently went through. And so the idea is I simply just prompt for what I want to get from the website, and then it creates a data source that I can ultimately tie to a template. That template, as I said, will just continuously update, and you don't really need to touch it moving forward because that's the whole idea, is that it updates automatically. And so over on the left, this just gives you an example. This is actually what it looks like when you go into the AI data sources interface. But you can simply see that I said I wanted to grab some past events. I said, can you write 3 content posts for these 3 events that occurred at Marshall University over the past week? I need the following information. I need a title, description, and the sport we're talking about. And so in this case, you'll actually notice there is no URL that we provided. So how exactly are we getting this information from the web? Well, that's where AI data sources are just a little bit different. It's the idea that we're able to create a feed based on information we get from the vast web. So if you imagine in the same way that you do a Google search, right? You could say past events or sports results at Marshall University, and you probably get multiple different articles that talk about their latest games, maybe a roster page or a standings page that shows when their last games were, etc. Or even news articles that were maybe written by the local paper, etc. And so how this tool works is you simply just type for what you want. And again, the example on the left is great for this. Can you write 3 content posts based on events that occurred at Marshall University over the past week? And then again, it lists the information that we need. And so the idea is you don't need to give us a website. If your organization or the information that you want to get is public facing enough, then it's as simple as prompting for what you want. And then we can tie that to a template to display it on the screen. So let me go ahead and just show this video here, and this will give you a better sense of what I'm talking about. This would be an example of our AI web scraper. So in this case, we actually have cities and municipalities in Texas where they need to display upcoming events or meetings that they're having in a public setting. And so basically, I need to grab those and I need to display them on an interactive screen so that people in the public can view them. So you'll see in our data sources panel, I selected our web scraper. I provided a URL to that web page we were just looking at. And I said, can you extract the upcoming event information and their agendas? Make sure you extract all the upcoming events and I need these details. And then I specify the event name, etc. Here in the center, I can also say how often this updates. So I want it to update every day in this case. And over on the right, this is all the information that we're receiving from the website. And so where the magic really happens is where we combine this data source with a template. And so that's what we see here. This is actually our public notice board solution that we've offered to these cities and municipalities where, again, they need to get this information from their website and displayed in a physical location so that they can follow different compliance laws and those type of things that exist within Texas. So it was a great solution for them because they already had this information. They were already in compliance online, but the laws just changed to where they needed to show that locally somewhere. So I know this is a very specific use case, but this can be used for many different things. For example, the blog that I just mentioned, maybe you have a news section on your website. Oftentimes you see this with schools, for example. So there's many different use cases that you can use for something like this. And in this case, this is a little bit different. So this is the AI data source I'm talking about where we aren't just web scraping, we're just looking at the entire web. So this could be, again, good for like local events, maybe there, again, like sports results, as I alluded to previously. And so you'll see here, I type in Marshall University's past events. That's what I'm going to name this data source. And then I simply just prompt what I want to show. So we saw this example previously in that slide. Again, show me or create content post for the last 3 events that occurred at Marshall University during the last week. And I can also structure the data in a certain way. So if you're a partner who really likes to get technical and into details, you can specify how you want the data to be structured so it fits with your specific template. But the result is something that looks like this. This content will run forever. The idea is that as long as we can keep finding information about your organization on the web, we have a template that it can be paired up with and continue to update. So in this case, I have a title, description, the image behind it, and this will update every day. It could update every week if you want it to. But the idea is that it's a constant feed of content that you don't have to manage. It just updates automatically. So I know a lot of times customers will get busy. They don't necessarily have time to update their signage. So this is just one way of keeping it fresh that's not just a generic weather feed or stock information or other types of infotainment you can put on a screen. It's actually specific to the customer. So a good example of this is we actually had a partner, ImageNet Consulting. They had an event where they brought in 15 different school districts in the DFW area, and we're showing off some of the different solutions that they have, and also what they're doing with AI. And in about an hour, I was able to take a single template, set up AI data sources so that we can, in the same way that we're grabbing news and sports results from Marshall University, we're able to do the same thing for all of those schools. And because we have a system that adapts very well to these type of things, we're able to create this in under an hour. So I think it's quite impressive. And again, yes, it may take a second to set up initially, even though an hour is quite fast, but that will continue to run. So it's running currently in their demo room right now, and as they bring in more and more clients to show off our solution, they'll be able to show that one because it continues to run. All right, let's go to the next slide here. All right, so this is, I think, a very exciting thing for Wallboard, and that is the ability to control our system through the power of AI. And what do I mean by that? So if you've ever used like Claude or ChatGPT, for example, you've probably seen the option where you can use their connectors. So let's say like Notion, or for example, like Spotify or Bookings.com, etc. Those platforms also have the ability to add custom connectors. And those connectors basically allow you to manage your software application through natural language that you give the AI. The AI is just acting on your behalf based on what you just instructed to it. And so I think immediately this will have a lot of advantages, maybe not for our customers who don't have a lot of screens, but definitely for enterprise customers where you have a lot of things to manage. You have to do a lot of clicks, things take a lot of time, but also for our partners. And specifically, what I mean by this is when it comes to things like onboarding. I think the biggest thing that you'll see by using our MCP connector, Modern Context Protocol, that's what it stands for. But I think the biggest thing that you'll see when using our connector with these platforms is that you can do things much faster than you would have ever been able to before. For example, I'll show you where we onboarded 50 devices at once. We permissioned them, organized them, tagged them, etc., based on where they were located. And we were able to do that in minutes. I was actually trying to record the video and I could not record it fast enough because they were being added that quickly. That would have at least taken you 45 minutes, an hour to even just do the physical clicks in the system. On the other side of that is this really bridges the skill gap between end users and our power and our platform. I started the beginning of this webinar talking about how powerful our platform and how there's all these capabilities. Well, if someone can't achieve those capabilities or achieve the end result they want with our features, then that's not very good. So in this case, MCP, or let's say Claude for this example, that's using our connector, it understands our API. It understands our system quite well. So it's actually easier to use some of these more advanced features with its assistant. It's almost like you have a wallboard sales engineer or a wallboard expert at your disposal. You simply just ask for what you want and it carries out the task. For example, I could say, hey, I want to set up an automated content feed because I'm tired of manually uploading my content, or keeping it fresh. Can you help me with that? And it will say, well, great. One of the ways that we can do this is by using AI data sources. What type of information would you like to show on your screen? If you were Marshall University, you'd say, I'd like to show previous sports results or news that's happening around our university. And it will help set that up for you. That means you didn't have to know what AI data sources were. You didn't have to know that we had certain templates that match up with those, to show the content that I just showed you. It's able to identify all of that. So I think that this is really helpful. Again, I think this will make a big impact on our partners because our partners have um, uh, they have a huge impact when it comes to the end result that our users have. So I think our end users experience is really good, especially when they're able to use a lot of our convenience features, I like to call them, or things that can make their life easier, but you need to know how to use those and implement them. And so I think especially for our partners, due to the time savings and how quickly you can set these things up, it will almost become a standard that you're setting some of these things up, because you can do it so quickly, and you can be that much more helpful to your customers. And also for things like the day-to-day management, it also does help not just with onboarding, or helping you do more advanced things, but it can also help you do the daily things much quicker. For example, let's say I'm a restaurant and I have daily specials, one for each day of the week, or the weekdays, let's say. Well, if I wanted to create a thing that shows off the daily specials for each day, that means that I would have to add a template to a playlist. It means that I would have to quickly make edits using our quick editor to that playlist or that template. So, for example, maybe instead of it being Monday, this is the daily special for Tuesday, and it's the club sandwich, and it comes with fries and a drink, and it's 11.99 specifically during lunchtime. Um, this is all manual clicks that you would have to do in the system and then replicate over and over again for those 5 daily specials that we were just talking about. You could have simply just prompted Claude that, told them what your daily specials were, and it's actually able to not only edit those templates, but then put those into a playlist, schedule them for each day of the week, and then assign them to a screen. So it's carrying out multiple processes at once. And I know this may be a little bit hard to grasp, at least for right now, but let me just show you a couple examples where this is applicable. So this is in Claude, for example, where you can add custom connectors. So you'll see we just had Wallboard. And if this is something you want to do, our preferred platform is Claude. It's at least what we have the most experience with. And there is a guide that we can send you on how to set this up. So if this is something that you want to do, we can certainly point you in the right direction. But here you'll see in this case, this is the onboarding example I mentioned. I said I have a spreadsheet. I have all the device names, the locations that these devices are going to be located in, and their serial numbers. So if you're using something like BrightSign, LG, or Samsung, this is a very, very easy way to onboard your devices because they have standardized serial numbers. So as you can see, here's all our devices. And it was able to do this with about 50 devices and permission them within about, or let's say under 5 minutes. Meanwhile, I was doing something else. And so in this example, this is where we can actually edit information in a content. I have a menu board in this case. This is powered by data, so could be an internal data source in our system, for example. And I said I want to update it. Now, this is where I think where it really starts to get interesting, is because you can be very vague to a certain degree. So, for example, I just said I wanted help updating my food menu. It then says, okay, do you want to add or remove items? Do you want to say that an item is out of stock? Do you maybe want to adjust their price? In this case, I'm going to say that I just want to add a new item. So I want to add the Tex-Mex salad. It's 10.99, and we have 10 available. And you'll see in the bottom right-hand corner, if you give Claude just a couple of seconds, it's already added that new item to the list. So I think that this is only going to continue to get better and better. MCP itself and the implementation of it is a newer technology. So really, of course, with the surge of AI, this is something that was a byproduct of it. So I think by more and more of our partners using this, and us getting feedback on different use cases, and even our own internal testing, I think we're going to be able to empower a lot of our partners and end users on how to use this to its fullest extent, or at least how we can save you the much time as possible. So anyway, that is a quick webinar, or at least some of the features that we wanted to cover. There is one important thing, though, that I have to mention. And for some of you, you may not even be exposed to this because you've already switched over to 2.1. But if you are still using our older version of Wallboard, which is our 1.0 version, there are some changes that we made that will only be available in 2.0. For example, I started off this webinar saying how we've made a lot of infrastructure and security updates behind the scenes. These things were not things that we could port over into the newer version of our software. So if you are still using our older system, and let's say, for example, you try to modify your users in your account, or you want to set up two-factor authentication, we are going to automatically redirect you to the 2.0 version of our platform. So far, we haven't, I mean, we released 2.1 weeks ago, and we haven't received any negative feedback regarding this. So I think that's great because it means that people have already switched over to our new platform. Um, but I think also it's because we're just trying to make a gradual change. Of course, when it comes to things like security and providing you the latest and greatest platform, there are some things like this that we have to change, or at least make you use the most latest version to take advantage of them. And so before I end this and hand it over to Ian, I just wanted to summarize. As far as what 2.1 delivers, we wanted to focus on enterprise grade security. This, you could probably hear me say this in every webinar that we'll do in the future. We also wanted to clean up our content architecture. While it may not be very apparent for you right now, it is going to allow us to refine and simplify our interfaces and content editing experience further down the road. Also, we wanted to expand our data capabilities. So a lot of people do that already through integrations, but we wanted to bring in some of our own in-house integrations. For example, with Facebook and Instagram, we used a platform historically called RSS.app. We don't want you to have to use an external platform. We want you to be able to use our platform internally, and there's not something else that you have to pay for to show your social media feeds. Or let's say you want to curate your own data, but you're finding that Google Sheets or Excel is limiting. Well, we have a solution for you now. And last but not least, of course, I think this will continue being a revolving topic, which is AI. We wanted to find the best ways that AI could impact our customers in a very unique and powerful way. And so we thought MCP is going to be the solution for that moving forward. But also, we found ways to include things in our product itself that you don't have to pay for a cloud subscription to use. For example, AI data sources and our AI web scraping. So what can you expect moving forward this year? Like I said, we want to make things simpler. So whether that's enhancing the way that you navigate through playlists, or able to add content or assets to playlists, I should say, we want that to feel simpler. We're also redesigning our designer interfaces. So I think that this is really exciting. In my opinion, a lot of people know and love our content editor, and this is why they chose Wallboard a long time ago or recently. And so it's something that a lot of people love, and we've wanted to bring you an updated version of that. So our current estimates are that later this year we will release beta access for this. So first, that will be rolled out to our partners so that we can get some initial feedback. But this is something that is on the horizons, and we're currently planning and implementing it behind the scenes currently. Other things too, like branding. For example, if you use our templates today, you may wonder, why do I have to import a template, change my branding, make it my colors, my logo, etc.? Why doesn't that just happen automatically? Why when I first get into Wallboard, do I just not set what my preferred logo is, my colors are, etc.? And we just automatically have those changes take effect whenever you import a template. So branding preferences, that will be something that comes. And then also too, we're an enterprise platform, and governance is pretty important. There are a few ways that we're working with right now in order to provide those type of governance features. More to come on that. But yeah, I think it's a really exciting time for us. I think, again, just summing this all up, we spent a lot of time on building a powerful platform. Moving forward, we also want to make that an accessible platform. I think moving forward, you'll be seeing a lot more updates and features and revisions that align with that vision. All right. So thank you, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Ian, but greatly appreciate your time and sticking with us today.
Thanks, John. And I remain amazed by how much you can get through with such clarity in the time. We haven't had tons of questions, and I think we had one that was sort of answered in the chat. There was someone asked if there were any plans to support BrightSign players playing Power BI reports in the most recent firmware version, and I think the answer was that was sort of being addressed, and that if you're in that situation, you should sort of get in touch with us. Is that fair to say?
That is, if John Macon put it in the chat, then that is the official answer. Yeah, I believe we have resolved this. And yeah, reach out to support at wallboard.us and we'll get you taken care of.
Fantastic. I did put in the so obviously, you know, you talked about quite a lot of things like, you know, the new playlisting capabilities, the internal data sources, the AI data sources and web scraper. I think there was a lot of interest in the sort of Claude and the MCP. In the chat, I put links into our forthcoming deep dive webinars, which are happening from next week. So please, if you are interested in those sessions, please do sign up. You will also get those sign up links in the email that you get after this is concluded, which will also give you a replay if you want to sort of send this on to a colleague or anything. So just to let you know, those are happening, and those would be the times when we go sort of more than sort of surface deep into sort of some of those sort of more advanced capabilities. So yeah, please do sign up for those if you're interested. And Claude seemed to be a particular one of interest, unsurprisingly. So
yeah, just to add to that, Ian, if you paid or were here for the webinar and you know saw that all these different features and one piqued your interest, the goal was to give you a little bit more information about the feature and what we released without going into the details of how to set it up, etc. That will be covered in our deep dives, where if you actually want to use the feature and learn how to implement it, that's where we'll actually be walking through a live session where we show you how to set that up, etc. So.
a couple of quick
There's
questions coming through now. I'm on the content creation side. How do we upgrade our client kiosks? Does that one make sense?
So I'm on the content creation side. How do I think it just is dependent on what you're trying to achieve. So it depends on, I guess, what are you trying to put on your kiosks? Maybe we can take that after this session and we can help you with whatever the specific need is. I also saw one more question here, Ian, where it says, can you group layers? To answer that question, in Wallboard, the 1.0 designer today that everyone has access to, you unfortunately cannot group layers. However, we have heard everyone's feedback, and that will be included in the new version of our designer that I mentioned that will be coming later this year in a beta rollout, first to our partners and then hopefully to our end users before the end of the year. So yes, that is something that we are aware of, and we appreciate the feedback.
And there's a deep single sign-on question, which sounds like it's right up your street, John, from someone.
Believe it or not, I will not be the one who does the deep dive on SSO and SAML. If that is something that you're interested, Eric, and I'm familiar with your organization, we can reach out to you and get the information that you need. But yeah, this is something that you can set up yourself, and I believe we have a guide for it. So we'll reach out to you so that you can get the information that you need.
Fantastic. Well, we're actually a couple of minutes early, so we can give those minutes back to you. I think sometimes these things drag on forever and ever, but thank you again, John, for just keeping everything so succinct and on point. And you know, I hope people have got a lot out of it. And as I say, you will get a follow-up email with the replay if you want to send to colleagues, and also those sign-up links for those deeper dives. I've already seen the numbers creeping up on those, so that would be really great to go into those into more depth. And yeah, as ever, just well, thanks to you, John, for all the sort of huge effort you've put into kind of making this as accessible as possible, and thanks to everyone who's someone said thanks for the cameo from my dog. Yeah, it's Yes, I was on dog duties. I was hoping she'd stay asleep for the duration of the webinar, but she got up. But there we are. Anyway, thank you all very much, and it's goodbye from me. And yeah, John, thank you again, and yeah,
Thank you for your time, everyone. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
all the best. Bye bye.